Dr. Junarine obtained her PhD from UKZN. Her PhD study focused on gender and sexual violence in the primary school. She has worked closely with teachers, parents, and young children for 38 years as a foundation phase educator and a departmental head. Her current interests are directed towards becoming a copy editor and writer of a book based on her PhD research. I'm pleased to hand you over to Dr. Patsy Junarine.
Thank you. I just so love this auditorium. There's no one here, so no one's going to ask me questions. Okay, all right. As Diloshni said, my topic is young boys and girls' construction of gender and sexuality. I need someone to actually get onto my slide. This one, yes.
Sorry, 1 second. I need to find this mouse. So. Okay, there's a down arrow.
Thanks very much. As you can see, on my slide, I've got a picture, a drawing that was done by children. This drawing was done by a child who is 7 years old. The reason I've included this picture, this drawing in my title, is because I straight away want to direct you to how, I straight away want to show you that children are indeed sexual beings, they are gendered beings, and that they are invested in heterosexuality. Just by looking at the picture, I just want to spend a few minutes over there. What I had asked the children to do over here is to draw me a picture about school, about their friends, about boys and girls. And so this is one of the pictures that came through. There were many, many pictures, but I chose this one especially because it speaks to my presentation. So when I look at the picture, what do I see? I see 4 boys and I see 4 girls immediately. That straight away points to heterosexuality, boys and girls matching up with each other. And what actually confirms this is the hearts that's drawn over there. So you can see it is a heterosexual relationship. To begin with, I just want to read a little bit of the abstract, and I'm not going to spend too much of time on theory and stuff like that, but just to tell you that my study focuses on young boys and girls' construction of gender, sexuality, and heterosexuality. The school, as we know, is a prime site for the production of femininities, masculinities, and sexualities. And in school, ignorance in young children is equated with innocence, and precocious sexual knowledge with defilement and culpability. However, in what follows, I show that children are active agents in the construction of their gendered and sexual identities. Through focus group discussions and drawings, attention is drawn to the ways in which young boys and girls keep slipping in and out of what is known as childhood innocence. The children's responses in the interviews attest to themselves as sexual beings. However, whilst they position themselves as knowing, as having agency, and as being agents in producing their gendered and sexual identity, many often fell back into the stereotypical notions surrounding gender roles. However, given the clarity and sometimes ambiguity in the responses, it reinforces the arguments made by leading researchers in the field of childhood, gender, and sexuality studies, that children are actually powerful, agentic beings who can navigate and make sense of their gender and sexual identities and experiences. And this actually coheres with Barnard's 2016 book, in that constructions of gender, masculinity, and femininity are inextricably linked to sexuality. This study was conducted with children in grade 2, ages 6 to 8, in a working class school in Durban. And what I was actually looking over here is to find out how children ascribe meaning to gender, sexuality, and heterosexuality. The research was qualitative, and as I said, it involved focus group interviews, informal interviews, observations, field notes, and drawings as a method of data collection. The study, I think, was very significant in that it seeks to unravel myths about children as asexual beings, devoid of understanding, and all being active in the construction of their gender and sexual identities. The study also seeks to build on the children's positive insights, as well as to develop appropriate teaching methodologies or intervention programs at grade 2 level, which are for the most part silenced in the curriculum. As I said earlier, the aim of the study is to explore young boys and girls' construction of gender and sexuality and heterosexuality. The objectives then would be to examine how young boys and girls aged 6 to 8 years construct knowledge around gender, sexuality, and heterosexuality, and also to explore young boys and girls' agency in the construction of gender and sexual identities. There's a vast amount of emerging literature that talks to gender, sexuality, and heterosexuality within the school. And leading researchers such as Bana, Mayeza, Gaydon, Kane, Patman, Reynolds, Robinson, and of course Glenna McNaughton have shed light on the way children do gender, do sexuality, and how they operate within the heterosexualized institution, which is the school in this instance. My theory is basically, I use post-structural feminist theory and feminist literature to explore my topic. I also draw on Foucault, Butler, and Cornell, featured extensively in my theory as well. I also looked at language, and Garvey, I found that she helped me to understand how language allows for the subjective definition of experiences, and this allowed me to recognize the agency that children displayed in the discursive positions that they chose to situate themselves. With regards to Foucault, I actually liked and I found the way he looked at power was so applicable to how it worked with the children. And Foucault conceptualized power as fluid, malleable, and volatile. And he says that power can always be contested. And this, you will see, is very evident in the data that I'm going to present just now. And he also looks, he says, knowledge, power, and subject. We don't look at it one after the other, but we look at it concurrently, because he is interested in the relationships amongst them. And likewise, when I was analyzing the data, I was looking for the relationships with regards to knowledge, the power, and the subject. Okay? Foucault also says that power is not exclusive to certain dominant groups to oppress and marginalize other groups. Rather, he says that by engaging in relationships with others, everyone is a part of some part of power relationship. And there are actually a whole lot that Foucault talks on power, and I think in order for you to gain more, maybe you could read Foucault and, get to know a lot more and see how it fits into your study. With regards to the method, the study is qualitative, as I said, and ethnographic in some way, because I was the person that was researching, and the research was conducted in the school that I was situated in. And it wasn't like a 2-week or a 3-month research. It actually spanned over the year. And this helped me to collect the data when it was convenient, whenever there was opportunity. Being situated in the field actually helped me so much to gather the data, which I think I might have missed had I just been a visiting researcher. I also used focus group interviews, individual interviews, and drawings. Okay, the participant drawings I noted in the course of presentations prior to mine. Many of the presenters said that they use drawings as well. And just by looking at the drawing that you see on the screen at the moment, you can guess how powerful drawings can be, especially with little children who are not able to give voice to what they actually want to say. A drawing might be the most perfect way for them to actually share how they feel, how they think. And you will find that the drawing then becomes a tool for you to investigate further, for you to delve further, to get the kind of responses that you want to. And well, I found this method worked extremely well for me, both in my master's. In my PhD, I did do some kind of exercise like this, but I did not use this in my PhD because my PhD focused on a different age group, which was 12 to 14 years, and the experiences of gender and sexual harassment in the school. I also had field notes, and field notes were very, very important because what they showed was how children slip in and out of being a learner and then being someone that is more like a friend kind of thing. And I found that, you know, just by looking at the learners and listening to what they were saying, things that I never thought would emerge from certain learners suddenly became very evident. I didn't know, for example, like a certain learner would position himself as a player, or like girls will actually be, you know, they will enjoy, they enjoyed being referred to as sexy and things like that. And so field notes were very, very important when researching children, because what happens is, especially if you are doing ethnography, you tend to overlook these things because in my case, I was the researcher and I was the teacher. So I had to document and I had to be able to separate my experiences from that of a researcher and that of a teacher. Because when I occupied the position of a teacher, I was a different person. And when I was a researcher, I was a different person. But somehow, what was so beautiful about this entire process was that getting to know the children on that deep level allowed me, or allowed them, to actually disclose things to me that they might not have disclosed. And it would not have, I think when I shared some of my findings with the other teachers when I did a professional development workshop, they couldn't believe that these kind of things actually happened in school. And furthermore, some of the experiences that came out, I had to act on it. And this actually caused some ethical dilemmas in the course of my research, and you will find that as well when you work with children. The question of ethics always arises, always puts you into a fix, always makes you think, should I include this? Should I not include this? But believe me, you have to include whatever comes on, because that is what your study has shown, and that is what the children have said. And in order to understand what the children have said and what they do and what they draw, you have to address ethics best and the legal way that you can, so that you can showcase whatever comes through in your data. Okay. I spoke about the children. My sample, I had taken one class, which is 40 learners. I had given them all letters, and 22. I had 22 returns. 2 forms were unsigned, so I ended up with 20 participants. There were 12 girls and 8 boys. Okay. I spoke about myself as a research instrument. There was a lot of reflexivity that I had to engage in, because remember, as I said, I was a teacher in the school, and I also occupied a management position. So there were power dynamics. However, in the course of becoming close to the learners, I would say participants now, and becoming one, and I use the word one in inverted commas, it helped to break down the power differentials, because then I basically was the listener, and the children were the ones who were doing the talking. So I would ask the questions, yes, but what my one question would actually bring forth was amazing, because one would say something and then it would become, you know, a whole conversation, a discussion. So basically I was a listener, in this process. Another very important thing, I think, which the young students or the new students or the first-year students who are conducting research with young children, especially the honors, is for you to understand the setting when you're conducting research. This is extremely, extremely important. As far as possible, in my study, I chose places and spaces that were conducive. Conducive where I could actually sit down underneath the tree with the children, or maybe spend some time when they were having their breaks, or during my life skills time, I would do my observation. But the perfect opportunity came when there was a picnic. We had gone to a ground. The entire school went to the ground. And of course, I had my charges with me. And the boys were playing soccer. The girls were doing their own thing over there. And then I already had my children in groups. And so I called the groups, and then we started to talk. And in what follows, you will see some of the conversations that emerged. The data that's generated in the following interviews draw our attention to preconceived ideas of young children as innocent, incapable of constructing knowledge in their social context, and threatens many other notions of early childhood. In the following transcripts, we see how young boys and girls exercise and navigate their rights in ways that allow them to hide, display, and even deny their sexuality. In the course of the interviews, as I said earlier, the children were very frivolous. They were happy. They were shy initially. They were hesitant initially, but gradually we overcame them. They became confident as we progressed with the interviews. Bonner, in her research as well, in a 2016 book, she says that laughter acquires a symbolic significance in this context. She points out that it not only allows for validation and support of childhood cultures, but it also allows them to speak of transgression. Now, in school, a child would not just come up to you, or even if you have a conversation, if you had to ask the child, why don't you play with boys? The child, or let me be specific, if you ask the girl, why don't you play with boys? She'll say possibly, I don't like to play with boys, full stop. Or, I have my friends here, okay? But she points out over there, Bonner says that laughter acquires a symbolic significance in this context. She points out that not only does it allow for validation and support of childhood cultures, but it allows them to speak of transgression. So, when children start to laugh and they act coy, you know you've actually got a breakthrough when you are researching and when you get your data. Because the moment they start to laugh, then they start to be free, and then they start to talk. They don't feel hindered or they don't feel scared. And this is when the most important data can come through. At this stage in their development, these children aged 6 to 8, they were able to record and express their feelings and hence their sexuality. I just want to move on to my slides now. Slide is titled Girly Femininities. In the transcript below, we see the girls construct their femininities by either aligning themselves with and thus desiring dominant gender discourses, or what is termed girly femininities. We have Penny here who says, as I said, we were at a picnic. A picnic is very nice because you can play with dolls. And I say, why do you like playing with dolls? And she says, because dolls is my favorite toy that I can play. I like dollies because when you play with them, when I play with dolls, I feel like I am playing with baby's mother. Who is baby's mother? Mum. So here we see quite a few things. Doll, with which the learners engage with the dominant constructions of femininity. This is what they want to be. Girls, like their mums, displaying that kind of gendered behavior. But what we need to know is that also girls subordinate themselves when they play these games that position them as weaker in the eyes of the boys. They do not play the games that boys play because boys are supposed to be stronger. Oh goodness, time is racing. It's 5 minutes more. See how fast I can go. I might not do all my slides. I'll just do, sticking together. And then I asked the boys, so how is it that I asked them, so how is it that none of you have brought soccer balls to play? Don't you like playing with balls like those boys? And they say no. And I say, why? And they say, it's boring because it's hard, we can get hurt. And then I ask, so how is it boys then are not scared to play with the ball? And they say, well, they are boys, and they are strong. Okay? So again, it shows that they've got no interest in soccer and doesn't offer them the kind of satisfaction that their gender role, being girls, offer. We also find that girls give ascendancy to boys. Boys are strong, they are hardy, and in doing so, they reinforce their subordination and they uphold constructs of masculinity. And in the same way, the boys, they say, I ask, why don't you play with the girls and the dolls? And the boys, they show disgust. You know, they're adamant, because we're boys. Because we are boys, and we are not girls. And that's why we are playing with the ball. And then Prince comes on over here, and Prince is a very interesting character. And he say, but I used to play with my sister, with the dolls, only if she's bored. And then, well, the other boys say, but I don't like dolls because I'm a boy. So there's constant kind of, emphasis on this masculinity, this strong, this hard, this powerful masculinity. We play with ball because soccer, you can get hurt if the ball is hard. We are strong enough to handle this, whereas playing with dolls is like soft, okay? And so playing sport is highly gendered. It emphasizes physical strength, skill. It represents a strong masculinity. Also, in the course of this, you'll see elements of misogyny coming through. There's a dislike for things that are girly, okay? Prince, however, as I said, he defies the parameters set out by gender. He disrupts the hegemonic construction of masculinity, and he presents an alternate pattern of masculinity that does not hinge on the subordination of girls, and that's Bonner 2016 as well. And, okay. So if we continue with boys, because of time constraints. So basically, the boys did like the girls, but they liked the girls for certain reasons. And the reasons were because she can cook, okay? And she cooked nice food for you, she can make salad for you. And there were other transcripts as well, which stated that she can work, she can clean the house, she can wash the dishes, and stuff like that. The next slide talks to letters, cards, and pink glasses. So research on girls and femininity suggests that one of the most popular and dominant ways of doing girls is by accessing and projecting heterosexualized femininity. In these interviews, the children were eager to share their knowledge with me. They talk of love letters, writing in the sand, receiving presents from boys. However, as the interviews progressed, I am made aware of the deeper meanings the children attribute to their childish games. In seeing their thoughts and experiences with me, it becomes very plain to see that these children are able to make meaning and how they negotiate their sexuality and gender in the context of play. The children first talk of inking love letters to inform a certain person of their love. The letter written is very simple. I love Angel. I observed during the interviews that the recipient of the letter smilingly denies having received such a letter. Further evidence of childhood sexuality and heterosexual attraction is demonstrated in the following excerpt. I'm going to Simoniki, where I don't know. We were in the sand, waiting for our sisters and brothers, and then Tommy came. And Lindiwe said I must write. I write all the names of the boys, and I asked, who do you love in these boys? Faith says that she loves that boy, and that boy gave Faith pink glasses. So again, you see, the boy's identity is caught in demonstrating a hegemonic masculinity in heterosexual relationships, which translates into an exercise of power over girls, giving them gifts. This is also a finding by Butler and Conroy, who showed that the performance of dominant masculinity is often nested in the context of a relationship with a girl or women. Children, boys, also express their desire to have girlfriends. In their talks, they made mention of not one, but having 2 to 5 girlfriends. It also became clear that children had a strong sense of their heterosexuality. In one instance, it was made very clear that the participant was heterosexual, and the implication that he liked boys made the other participants laugh, and he was annoyed. And of course, he has the boyfriend. Boyfriend? No, girlfriend, ma'am. He has 5 girlfriends. Do you have girlfriends? I have. 2 is for here, meaning the school. So again, you see the comparison. Okay, they want to force, they want to show their hegemonic status. I keep getting reminders about time, so I just want to skip that. I want to go to gender violence and sexual harassment. Okay, so over here, the children talk about the experience of being harassed in the toilet, okay? So what had happened was 2 boys, they took some girls from grade 3 and they put them into the boys' toilet and they say, you must take your clothes off. And Zama said, I don't want to. And then they talked, Luwazi was taking us and pulling us into the toilet, and what did you all do? And they say, I screamed, right? And we screamed and we held the door, and they said, if I don't go into the toilet, they would hit me. And I pulled the door and I closed the door and I went to the grade R, ma'am. And there you see, early makings of gender violence and sexual harassment are manifest in very young boys. Unfortunately, I am reminded that time is up, so I will have to stop over there, but I just want to go to the conclusion. And in my conclusion, I want to say that primary school is a key social and cultural arena for sexuality. Primary school is underpinned by heterosexual discourse within the institution of heterosexuality, and children do sexuality as everyday practice. And children are sexual beings who claim inclusion in the sexual practices of heterosexuality. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Patsy. In the interest of time, please may I ask if you could hold your questions on until session 3. We're going to go into session 3, and I'd like to call upon Dr. Rabia Rizvi, who will chair the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rabia, and I will be chairing this session, which is entitled Queer Conversations in Educational Spaces. Our first speaker is Hao Wu, who is a PhD candidate in human geography at University College London, with research interests across 3 different subject areas, which are identity, media, and space. Hao also served as a postgraduate teaching assistant for the BA/MA media programs at UCL. Hao's research primarily focuses on how mobile digital technologies empower the social practices of Chinese queer communities. Please welcome Hao Wu, who will be presenting on Chinese queer males' memories of negotiating and practicing queer identities in educational spaces.
Hi everyone, I'm Hao Wu, also you can call me Casper. I'm from the University College London, and I'm 4th year PhD student. So this project is part of my PhD studies, and the title is Chinese Queer Memories of Negotiating and Practicing Queer Identity in Educational Space. So today's presentation, I will divide in 6 parts: the research background, exciting research, research gap, and research method, finding and conclusions. Let's talk about the background first. Why conduct the queer research in China is important. Chinese society has been regarded as strongly heteronormativity, in political, law, social norm, and cultural value. Meaning that heterosexuality is socially constructed as a normal and natural phenomenon. What's mean of the heteronormativity? Heteronormativity manifests in Chinese society as exclusion, marginalization, ignoration, and discrimination against those experience heterosexual or non-binary gender sexuality. I will give you more example. After 2021, under the regulation, Chinese LGBT pride was banned from the Chinese government. And also, queer-related drama show was banned from the TV. And last year, Chinese biggest LGBT center, Beijing LGBT Center, was canceled without reason. So those signs show that it's very difficult to expect the China government policy to promote the LGBT right. Luckily, we are human, so we have our agency to promote or change the situation. So this research is under this background. So first, what's the start point of the research? Because I'm from human geography, I think about what's the relationship of the space and gender. I will give you a not appropriate example in our daily life. Have you ever think about the public toilet? It's usually divided in the male and female. How about the transgender or non-binary gender? They don't have the choice. So for the gender diverse, in the University of Bangkok, they create one more option for the non-binary students. For UCL, they just removed the classification. They just use a single toilet for all the students. So what's the example show? It shows how we produce the gender in the space. As Benny said, space is not naturally authentically straight, but rather actively produced and heterosexualized, which means we can challenge it. So let's bring the queer geography knowledge in the educational area. How we think about educational space. And their example is from Global North, may not appropriate in the Global South, but they have a common thing is that the school space is an isolated place that the central and privileged cisgender heterosexual lives, which means the educational space is also defect think is as straight. So a question rests, can we challenge this situation? How can we do that? So I resist. So I find this research gap is that how Chinese queer students negotiate their gender and sexual identity in school space. For surviving or exploring this research question, I use a biographic interview. So why I'm not use other research methods, because this research is during the COVID. So I cannot go to offline to collect the data. I really want to doing the same thing with US, go to the school and have a chat with the child, but unfortunately I cannot. So my research is biographic interview and I use a mixed interview, online and offline. And this research will present like 20 Chinese queer males' memories, how the narrative about they are as a student in the school. So I will present my findings. So in the educational space, can be divided two main parts. The first part is student, the other part is teachers, and also the queer identity can be mixed of them. So first, I will introduce how queer individuals negotiate identity with the student. The first strategy I called building alliance. How queer individual against support from the female student. So their award is called Fujishi. Fujishi is a word from Japan. It means the female fans of the boys' love. So one of my participants said, the only reason I was able to stay in the school after I coming out was that my deskmate gave me a lot of support. She is a Fujishi, so she understands me very well. So we can find that they can also get the support from the heterosexuality, not only from queer side. That's quite important of the alliance size. They're not only a single phenomenon from the Austin. They also find a lot of evidence from my other interviewee. The other interviews say the Fujishi around me impact other student perspective of being gay. So Fujishi is also can be a knowledge source of show what is a gay, what is LGBT in the educational space. The other strategy is I called queer role models. Queer role models is that how the student know what is a gay, what is a queer. As my participants said, I only learned about top and bottom when I was a freshman in the high school. Because my roommate was gay, I learned about Bloody through him, and I signed up to the Bloody. Bloody is a gay dating app in China. And we usually think about gender, the social media is important for the queer to explore their identity, but we usually ignore how they know about this social media. They may need to consider who impact or inspire them use this kind of social media. That's a queer role models in the educational space. So the third strategy is co-creating knowledge about queer identity. They not have a pre-knowledge of what's meaning of queer identity for the student. So they may usually create knowledge by themselves. One example from my participant is when I was in high school, my friend liked Lady Gaga, and he is gay, and he liked speaking Linyu. Linyu is mean a popular language for the guys learned from Chinese female celebrity Julian Tai. So what's the common things from Lady Gaga and Julian Tai is they both like LGBT symbol icon of the LGBT. So they create their common culture in the school and use their language to present their queer identity. So they don't need to come out. When they talking about the Linyu, they are automatically identify you may are queer. So let's talk about how queer individual to negotiate identity with teacher. You may feel curious if they are queer role model, why the teacher not control this behavior because it's under the strong heteronormativity society. Because the performance is most important in high school. Under this math, if it does not affect academic performance, it can be ignored in some extent. This, as my participant said. So queer individuals use academic achievement as a negotiated capital to exchange, to be a gay, to be a queer in the educational space. And also, another strategy is that the queer student usually ask the teacher to not tell their parents of the queer identity. The separation between the school and the family. So school become an isolating space that they can explore and produce the space, produce the identity. According these findings, let's bring inspiration to the study of queerness in Global South. Is that in the context of being unable to change the national policy and the social context, this does not mean that queer people completely positive accept the situation, but actively negotiate with the environment. As present in this research, and queer student activity explore negotiation and produce queer identity, challenge the mass, that's educational space, different to the heterosexuality. So my research show example that even the change is small, but that's also show how we make the LGBT progress in the educational space. So hope I can bring the new knowledge to the South Africa, to the Global South. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next presenter is Muzi Zuma, a non-binary individual from Pietermaritzburg who is dedicated to community empowerment and LGBTQ advocacy. They are an actress, TV presenter, and makeup artist known for their work on popular South African shows. Muzi is also a traditional doctor and activist advocating for health, youth empowerment, and LGBTQ rights. Recognized as one of Mail and Guardian's 200 Young and Bright Leaders in 2019, Muzi's impact transcends entertainment. Their academic pursuits focus on gender and education, aiming to drive change in educational institutions. Muzi's journey embodies resilience, authenticity, and a commitment to inclusivity and social justice. Please welcome Muzi Zuma to speak on their experience of growing up as a non-binary learner at school.
Woo. It's worse this side. It's so much better that side. Greetings to everyone. I'm not going to waste time with, saying who I am again. Thank you so much, Doc, for that amazing intro. So what I've done, I know that I'm known as a blabbermouth. So I've written everything down on a piece of paper so that I'm able to adhere to the timing constraints for my presentation today. But yeah, like it's been said, my name is Umuzi Wagwazuma, and I'm here to tell you a bit of my life growing up as a non-binary identifying individual in South African school systems. So my life at school was always about creating a space for myself because there wasn't any space available for me, and every space that existed in school was only for boys or girls. In classrooms, when teachers would give out group activities, boys were always with boys and girls with girls. And then there was me. There'd always be that awkward silence when I was left alone, very suspenseful, because the question on everyone's mind was, what is ma'am going to do with Muzi? Sometimes I was given a choice, and of course I chose the girl group, because not only did I know that I was always going to be given space in girl groups, but I also knew that no one would be made to feel uncomfortable or end up being called names because they agreed to work with a person like me. I also never felt like a plague when I was in girl groups. You see, every time I was forced to be in groups with boys, not only were my duties always academic, in that I was made to do the research, to do the writing, and to create the posters, but if any physical touch was needed, I was always the narrator because I could not dare touch a boy without exposing them to copious amounts of bullying. All this just because I was a child born with the purpose of being different. Other times, some teachers were fed up with the fact that I always had to be accommodated, and would tell me that I must grow up and be a boy because I am no longer in kindergarten. My Afrikaans teacher in primary school leads this pack because she believed that she was too old to accommodate spoiled children. Now, I could not attend my Afrikaans lessons or change the subject, so I had to find another route so that I can evade feeling miserable in these lessons. I dedicated all my energy in becoming an excellent Afrikaans student in attempts of building a closer relationship with my teacher so that I could create an opportunity to explain to her that I was not being spoiled. I was just trying to be me, and that was different. I was not being intentionally difficult, as others would so assume, but there was only, but there was also not much I can do about how difficult it was for me to be me in school, and that was different. I didn't imagine this to be this difficult. It was extremely difficult for me to grow up in a system that was only for pink and blue. I not only became a top achiever in Afrikaans, but I had also softened the hardest teacher at school, and this changed our lessons for the better, not only for me, but for all of us in my class, particularly the marginalized young black boy. I used this approach with all my teachers because I then realized that being silent as a different child would always be to my detriment, and that did not sit quite right with me, even as a child. What should have made my life at school a bit easier made it even worse. When I finally got my teachers to understand me, and thus they started to create room for me and my voice in their classrooms, I got bullied even more and started being called these kind of words: a teacher's pet, a goody-goody tissues, and believe it or not, in primary, an ass licker. On top of already being called gay, morphe, faggot, istabane, coconut, and dombimfana, girl, boy, to name just a few. This did not affect me as much as it should have, because by then I had accepted that being bullied, being judged, and discriminated was the price that I had to pay to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. This was also when my academic strides started being profiled, and that my own peers started saying that I was not getting the grades I was getting through my diligence and hard work, but because teachers always treated me specially. Because in the early 2000s, being a multifaceted black boy was obscene and unheard of. And then there was sports. I was never chosen for anything in the sporting fields. I mean, I was allowed in the teams because they needed to do something with me, but I was always just a reserve on the bench that was never used. My coaches would literally cringe when they needed to call me into matches, and they would not even hide it. This broke me into pieces. But after wiping my own tears and patting my own back, I set out to become excellent in basketball, hockey, soccer, athletics, and rugby, because I was not about to become a for emergencies purposes only kind of learner. I did not want my coaches to choose whether to use me or not, so I built the skills and ensured that me making the team was never a question. This is a picture from one of my most amazing moments, and you'll see I've zoomed in. It does say first team hockey, but this is a representation of how hard it was for a non-binary identifying individual to not only get to first team, but to go through all the leagues before you get to first team. I will always be extremely proud that I not only achieved that, but I did it whilst wearing a first team jersey in all my sports, and it did not stop there. You see, being different meant that I was not confined to just the boys only list when it came to cultural, sporting, and extracurricular activities. And I took that as an opportunity. I took the opportunity to do extra, to fuel me in becoming extraordinary. And like represented in this image here, I celebrate finishing my school race as the most awarded learner at school, primary and high school, and I achieved that with receiving provincial and national full colors too. I must add, though, that the reason you don't see a first team rugby picture there is because when I was growing up entering the senior phase, I knew that as much as I needed to work hard as a different person, I was not willing to put my physical body at that risk. But I did find a way to get the first team rugby jersey, and that was through joining the first aid team and being diligent as a first aid team member to be chosen to be the first aid team for the first team rugby match. So I still got the rugby jersey just without doing the rugby. Yeah. So you see, I could have just accepted being the nothing that society viewed me as. I could have been a nobody at school and blend in with the background. But that also did not sit well with me because I wasn't a nobody. And my parents were not working hard to pay exorbitant fees for me to become a nobody. Whatever my differences were, I was and still am a somebody, and I was going to be treated as such. I also wanted to develop and grow just as much as the other boys and girls. I wanted to excel. I wanted awards, and I wanted my name on all honors boards that I could get to. I wanted my name engraved on all trophies, and I wanted it known that an authentic child did that, so that all those that came after me knew that they could too. And so I studied the system and found places for this child that liked purple and not pink or blue. I worked tirelessly to excel academically and in all extracurriculars because I needed to switch the script of my life. And to achieve that, my difference could no longer be my weakness. And so I took it and I made it my strength. I did not mind standing out, but I knew that I had to work damn hard to stand out. And so I did just that. I'd like to bring in a bit of context with this picture. In the year 2005, I moved from attending a very established private school because my mother, my grandmother, and my two aunts were involved in a car accident. Until that point, I was always attending boarding establishment schools for the reason that my parents wanted me to be as far away from the local Kasi culture as much as I can so that they could protect me and prevent me from becoming another statistic like my older brothers had become. Those statistics being substance abusers, those statistics being growing up to become a thief. But when I was in grade 8 in 2005, I decided to no longer fear society and no longer fear the system. I almost lost the life of my mother whilst being at school, and that also didn't sit quite right with me. And so I returned to Maritzburg to become a day scholar. And the one rule that I had for my parents is that my school had to be IEB because I had grown accustomed to the IEB system. The only school that was available for me at that point was a school that I won't mention for protection purposes, but it was a school that was a growing high school, private, yes, but it was growing, in that it didn't have extracurricular activities that allowed me to be as free, adventurous, and explorative as I could be. And that's when I decided to champion and pioneer change and go to the principal's office and demand there to be an introduction of more extracurriculars. And I was very particular about the extracurricular activities that I was presenting to the principal, in that I wanted them to know, I'm going to make a few examples, SCA, which is the Student Christian Association, Interact. The reason I wanted to start SCA is because I wanted the world and my school and my peers to know that you don't need to be a particular gender or a particular sex for you to believe in Source, for you to believe in Christ. And it was important that we understood that we can move that gospel forward together. Interact was very important for me to start because I also wanted to send a message indirectly to my boy peers in encouraging them that you do not need to be a girl in order for you to do good for your community, to do good for your school, or to do good for your family. So that's just a bit of context there. But even in that context, I remember the one thing that pushed me to go to the principal's office was that I felt ostracized. I felt like for the first time in my life, there was nothing for me to do because I found pretty much a basic system. And even though you can still see that as much as there were boys and girls who were comfortable with the system, who were comfortable with the binary and the uniform, I still decided and chose to be that boy who was not afraid of smiling in class photos. And I knew that extracurriculars, like you were saying, were the platform that we could use to develop or to build an identity back in school. So that's just the bit of context that I wanted to give. Ooh, sorry. So yeah, I did not know about gender growing up, nor did the adults around me, because the only label they identified me with was gay. And I, for the longest time at school, did not feel like I identified with this label growing up, because it was always associated with sex and liking boys. And that was not why I was being different. I was not being different because I liked boys or I wanted them to have sex with me. I was different because I was different, and I was always just being me. I mention this because the world and those in opposition of a non-binary and gender-fluid world need to stop misconstruing gender, sexuality, and sexual orientation. I was a child who just wanted to be a child, and school and its systemic defects did not even allow me that. But there were days which were my favorites at school, and these were special occasion days. Days like Civies, days like Polar Bay Day, and other days of that nature. These were my favorite days, where I could put the uniform to rest and be creative. I knew that I had very few of these, so I wanted them all to be meaningful. Everything that I wore had to have a message, because I knew that because I was wearing it, there was always going to be someone who was going to stop me and ask me why. And even though I wanted my answer to always be because I wanted to, I was very aware that we're living in a society that was needing education. So I took that as an opportunity to educate whoever was asking me why my particular choice of fashion. You'll see some of the pictures where I'm wearing the striped pink gown. This was from Polar Bear Day, which is a day like the winter solstice, and we swim the lap in the pool because it's cold. And I had arrived to school wearing track pants and a sports jersey, which I actually got while I was in Nottingham at Nottingham Blue Coat School. And I arrived to school wearing that, and when I got to school, the teachers were on some Muzi, the children are complaining and they're saying that we're always accommodating you because you are at school and you're not wearing pajamas. So I reached out to one of my girls and I took the gown and I wore that gown, and I then educated them and I said, I'm not wearing pajamas because when I go shop for pajamas, there aren't any pajamas for me. And this was the only way that I was allowed to come into school. You'll also see in this right-hand corner, this is from Civies Day with the red tie. You see, I'm that unique child in that I don't believe that it was a mistake for me to be born with the birth gender that I am. It was not a mistake for me to be born as a boy. I am very content with being born as a boy, and that's why I identify as non-binary, because I like living my life having the best of both worlds. So I wanted to use my opportunities at Civies Day to send a message out to the world that I'm not being feminine because I'm running away from my masculinity. I actually love the male fashion, but I will do it my way up until there's a character that there's an aisle or a store that identifies with me. And also, I've included 2 pictures that we had on our gender swap day. And I think this is important for us to acknowledge that there is a sense of freedom that exists in schools. It's just not enough. And yeah, so you can imagine that doing this was not an easy thing to do. I got commentary from leaving the gate at home to coming back, and growing up black and different in a conservative Zulu city. Unfortunately for me, most of it was not nice. But I would not have been able to do it. I would not have been able to receive everything whilst remaining strong and unshaken if it was not for the support system I had going through it. And this is my girl appreciation post, because I would not have made it if it wasn't for my girls, those who I have posted, and those and the many more that I could not. Thank you. And this is why, for me, feminism is important, because I owe it to every single girl out there to fight for them as much as these girls fought for me when I was in school. And so I accepted very early on that I was given a blank canvas when I was born. It did not come with any guidelines, markings, or a set of instructions. And today, I celebrate this very brave, this very strong, multifaceted Black boy who decided to just be a child. I am thankful to my parents for grabbing the opportunity to raise this wild child and just ran with it. I am grateful to my family for supporting and shielding me as I grew into being myself. It really took a village. At home, I was always given space. My voice always mattered. My family did not care about my accent or my command of the English and Afrikaans language. They celebrated it. And so I decided to do the same and not care about the negative commentary I was receiving because of this. And that's when I started celebrating it. And through celebrating it, I needed to be comfortable being the center. My family, being my number one support system, my biggest cheerleaders, was truly impactful in my life because it gave me something to work towards. I have always wanted to make them proud. And so to those times when I was left alone to form my own group, I am glad that I chose to let my work speak for itself. Through just being me, sharing my thoughts and interpretations of school and life, I was able to start attracting positive attention and admiration from my peers. I had to make every single moment impactful. It was important for me to, though imperfect, be a sound representation of difference so that I could encourage, even if it was just one person, to also be different, to also be great, and to be authentic versions of themselves too. And then there was another special occasion day, which is our 40 days. In one of the celebrations we had, celebrating our last days of school, we were allowed to redesign or change our uniform and wear our own versions to school. We were all our happiest because we were not confined to the system and its codes for that day. And it will always be a sweet memory for me, and I will always be in awe of how free my peers were and how differently they expressed themselves when they were not being what society stipulated them to be. That joy, that excitement is what we owe our children, and they should feel it every single day at school and not just on special occasions. This was so important for me because this day reminded me that I was not alone. To see girls who felt comfortable to go to a private Christian school to wear shorts and gray slacks on that day, to wear the boy uniform as boldly as they did, and for me to finally get rid of those gray slacks and have my grandmother make them into gray skinnies. Literally, this was the best day of my life at school. And that's when I realized that school also was an important moment for me to break free. This is why I have decided to work towards joining the table of academic philosophers championing such a pivotal movement. I think that it is high time we move beyond the boys and the girls dynamic because there is so much more to us than our chromosomes. It's important that we break free from the prison of the pink and blue dynamic because not only are there 7 colors, but there is a kaleidoscope more that we can create from that 7. When I was struggling with my identity in high school, I chose to start modeling and hide behind that industry while I explored who I was and who I wanted to become. It was easier for me to tell people that I was wearing eyeliner because I am from a shoot than trying to explain to them that yes, even as a boy, I liked wearing eyeliner. And I grew up in the time of America's Next Top Model, and I'm glad that through that show, society at least understood that as the model, you were never the artist, and you were always the art. And that's why I chose to hide behind makeup, because I could explore and wear black nails and wear eyeliner. And whenever I was questioned, I always said that I've just come from a shoot. And whenever they questioned that, I always said I'm a model. So when I get to a shoot, I do what the artist, the designer, or whoever is asking me to do, and I don't have a choice. That was the only way that I could allow myself to explore, to discover more of me, and to still try be a human in a very crippling system. And I really want to say, as I draw to the end, that it does take society. And that is why I say that I am a socially constructed body, because it literally took society and its defects for me to become who I am. I now know that my existence and expression of self no longer needs to be in response to anything, to anyone, or to any system. when I realized that I can do so many more of the things society said that I could not do or access because I was a boy, that moment was life-changing for me. Especially because when I finally realized that I no longer needed anybody's permission to be me, I finally became me. And I used this slide to show that I was able to become me without the use of hormone replacement therapies or without the need of any gender reassignment surgeries. And this is why I am presenting my life as a body of work to speak for the gender non-conforming, to speak for the non-binary, so that we can save our children and our young boys and girls from going the HRT route, because that's what society would allow them. And going the HRT route is the only way that they could feel accepted. I feel that that is time that ends. And so, when I finally realized that I'm both the artist and the art in my life, I decided to take that brush and every single resource made available to me and paint a masterpiece. Growing up as a non-binary child was tough, but it forced me to go deep within and find the love that the world never gave me in myself, so that I stopped living like I was trying to earn it every single day. This pilgrimage of self-discovery, though harrowing and dark, allowed me to find my light and thus find the Christ in me. I have chosen to swap my chains with pearls so that I can wear my scars like jewels. And I've decided to take all the dirt that has been thrown on me just for being different and bloom where I have been planted. In conclusion, I would like for us very briefly to go on a quick trip. I want you to think back when you were a child and you fell in the playground field and scraped your knee. I was going to open this up to the floor, but I think because of time, I'll just continue. I'm sure the one thing that you wanted after falling and scraping your knee, the one thing that you wanted first, and the one thing you wanted the most was support. You did not care how it came. You just wanted it. And more importantly, what you wanted was acknowledgement of the fact that you were hurt and that it hurt. You wanted the love that this support and acknowledgement came with. And of anything else that could have mattered, the love as a child was what you needed the most. And that's the love that we as educators need to always be giving to our children. The love is what you wanted and needed the most, not who it came from, is what I wanted to say. I've been that child. And when I fell and scraped my knee, no one came instantly to my attention because they did not know how to instantly respond. Do they say sorry and hug me as they would with girls? Or do they tap me on the shoulders and tell me to toughen up as they would with boys? Only moments later did someone come to my aid, because first they had to think about whether to approach me as a boy or girl before realizing that they had to approach me because I was still just a child. It's 2024, and I do not think that any child should experience that pain, and that's why I say boldly that it ends with me. Being in a room with people who want to change this empowers me because it makes me realize that it is possible, that we can truly end up living in a world where children are encouraged to just be children, that all children can receive support instantly, irrespective of their sex, their gender, or their sexual orientation, and that they can receive instant support irrespective of who it comes from. This requires us all to be much better adults and do better for our children, because they are who we are all doing this for. You do not need Google Scholar to tell you that a child's life depends on it. You have me. I am currently unemployed and can confirm that urgent amendments are needed because it does not get better after school. It gets worse, and we can do something about it and should do something about it so that children do not give up one day like me and choose poverty over trying to earn a living in an impenetrable system. I finally had to put myself first because I was at my breaking point, and this time I chose myself. I chose my sanity, and still I say no one deserves to ever be at such a crossroads. Growing up, when I was struggling to find my identity, confused by the rainbow acronym and its vast offerings, I also chose to hide behind the beauty industry because there, who I am would never be questioned. Not only did I become a globally renowned makeup artist, but in doing so, I also got to show that boys can and do wear makeup too. As an unemployed full-time student who lives in Pietermaritzburg, which is an hour away from campus, every day I go live on TikTok and I do live makeup tutorials and beg for donations so that I am able to put petrol in my car and show up every day to my purpose, because I now realize that being born different was my calling, but being different is my purpose, to show that it can be done. And that's one thing that I want to say that growing up as a non-binary child taught me. It gave me character. It gave me vigor to fight. And that's why I'm willing to continue doing every single thing I can, scrummaging for every single cent, so I show up to all my lectures so that I am able to be successful in my academic pursuit, because I know, and I can tell you this for sure, that the lives of our children depend on it. I will always be grateful to my past because it has shown me that I am a fighter. And that is why I will continue to fight, to continue creating spaces for all children. I do not think any child should go through what I've gone through, and it pains me that there are still so many wallowing away in this very pain today. That is why my hand is up, because I want to continue doing something. This time, I am not going to hide behind any industry, but I will be standing on my truth. I am going to offer my life as a socially constructed body, to help the world in fully understanding the magnitude of damage caused by its binary system and its defects, and boldly join those working towards finding solutions to neutralize it. When I heard this quote that says, "Nothing changes if nothing changes," I listened and I decided to change. The world will too. We do not grow up to be boys and girls. We grow up to be adults. And I think it's important that we start being better adults for our children so that they can grow up to become adults that will do the same for their children. And just to take the last 2 minutes and not continue, these 3 images I chose because, like I said, my context is being Zulu and living in a location in a very remote Gussie and Pietermaritzburg. And spirituality and Christianity have been one of those institutions that I grew up being told that I'm not able to access because of my sexual orientation, because of my sexuality. And that's why I speak with vigor and I speak with passion when I speak about my spirituality. Because as a Zulu identifying black boy, I was able to embark on a pilgrimage that society told me I will never be able to access. And I stand today, 3 years later, as a traditional healer, as a royal healer, as a spiritual doctor and alchemist. And for me, the most important thing is that we do not need to respond to our oppressors with oppression. Because I tell you that there are fathers, old fathers, who come with the ignorance, who come with the questions, who come with the slurs. But every single time they knock on my door, seeking help from uMakhosi Zuma, I don't know how, but they are able to see my heart. They're able to see me as a person, and they're able to know that they can get help from me too, even though I'm not a stereotypical boy, even though I'm not a stereotypical black boy. So in closing, I just wanted to come and say that to anybody who's wondering what non-binary, gender-fluid children grow up to be, they grow up to be this. They grow up to be me, an honest student who is determined to change the world for the better in gender and education. Thank you.
Thank you, Muzi, for that eye-opening presentation. Our final presenter is Nondumiso Mapumulo, who recently completed her master's degree at the University of KZN. Nondumiso will begin her PhD this year, and it will be focused on teenage pregnancy. Please welcome Nondumiso, who will be presenting her master's research entitled High School Learners' Perceptions of and Attitudes Towards Same-Sex Desiring Learners in a Co-Educational Rural School in KwaZulu-Natal.
Good afternoon to you all. Good afternoon. It is a great honor for me to be present here at this conference to present my study that aims to examine high school learners' perceptions of and attitude towards same-sex desiring identities in a co-educational high school in KwaZulu-Natal. Right, I will start by a brief introduction and then move on with the slides. Okay. Despite the constitutional provision in South Africa that explicitly prohibits both direct and indirect discrimination, gender-based discrimination persists significantly within the country. This is particularly the case concerning non-heterosexual identities, such as individuals with same-sex desiring identities who often find themselves culturally unrecognized and subjected to shame, harassment, violations, and discriminations. Same-sex desiring learners encounter many-sided challenges within the school environment, grappling with adverse perceptions, entrenched heteronormativity, and pervasive homophobia. Discrimination rooted in the heteronormativity and heterosexism is not limited to the broader society. It also permeates educational institutions, with teachers and learners often fostering and endorsing these biases. For example, a recent media report revealed that a young learner named Tiro Mulusi, who identified as same-sex desiring, took his own life on the 16th of August 2022 in Soweto after being humiliated by a student teacher in school because of his sexual orientation. He was being called a sissy boy. In Gauteng, a 12-year-old learner named Sbusi Sombata took his own life on the 23rd of October 2023 after homophobic remarks from the deputy principal, who also called him a sissy boy. There are also many incidents when you go to social media and media that you will find on learners who decided to end their lives because of the humiliation and marginalization and discriminations they encounter from school, both from their teachers and both from their fellow classmates or their fellow schoolmates. These incidents shows that same-sex desiring learners are still not accepted and are discriminated against in schools. In the society with inclusive constitution, homophobic discrimination in South African schools occur far too often. This is an indication that in South Africa, there is a huge gap between law and practice. I'm sorry, I think I have skipped. Right. Homophobic attitudes and behavior have been identified in schools around the world. The institutionalization of heteronormativity as the norm through societal structures, practices, and institutions contributes to a heterosexist school environment that fails to acknowledge alternative sexualities. Gender-diverse learners frequently face marginalization, discrimination, bullying, and neglect. The conventional Christian belief system includes aspects that favors the idea of only heterosexual orientation being considered acceptable in the eyes of God, while any other sexual orientation are regarded as sinful, immoral, and subject to condemnation. In this study, I draw on multiple theoretical frameworks to elucidate how learners' perceptions of same-sex desiring identities are constructed. I employed gender as a social construct as underpinned by Cornell's theory of gender and power relations and Butler's theory of gender performativity with a specific emphasis on the heterosexual matrix. The theory of social constructionism is based on the idea that the comprehension of the world is a result of human cognition. heavily molded by social interactions and consensus that determines what is deemed legitimate and factual in a given society. Butler introduces the idea that gender is performative, meaning that it is not solely a result of cultural or social forces, but rather expressed through repetitive enactment of male and female roles conform to societal norms. All right. This case study was conducted in a core educational non-fee paying school in Pinetown, KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. The participant sample included boys and girls aged 15 to 18 years old. Methods of data collection were semi-structured individual interviews and focus group discussions using photo elicitation. The data were then organized into common themes using thematic content analysis. The theoretical tenets of gender theories shaped the interpretive focus and supported the findings. The study only comments only after obtaining ethical clearance from all relevant stakeholders. Right. The study is going to focus on 4 themes that I have chosen to focus on today. One is invoking heteronormativity through family lineage. Okay. Let me try to slow down. Okay, when you look at the slide, there is a comment from 2 participants, which is Sanele and Makosini. And when you look at the comment from Sanele, he refers to a man must build and grow the family of his father. This is reflective of a traditional masculinity that emphasizes procreation and continuation of family lineage and is connected to patriarchal structure where men are expected to fulfill specific roles and responsibilities. In this study, learners' perceptions and attitudes towards same-sex desiring identities and relationships were rooted in the belief that a woman should seek a husband and a man should find a wife to ensure the continuity of the family name. And when you also look at the comments from the participants, they refer to the need for having children, which they believe if you are in a same-sex relationship, it will be impossible for you to have children. So in that way, they disregarded the same-sex sexualities and the same-sex relationships. Learners thus rejected same-sex relationships by evoking heteronormativity through family lineage. Participants in this study held belief that same-sex relationships threatened traditional gender roles which exist in society and are necessary for the continuation of life. The conventional understanding is that social structure is commonly regarded as a benchmark against which all other family arrangements are assessed. In this study, it was evident that tradition endorsed and sustained conventional behavior and cultural norms, leaving no space for diversion. Those who divert from the norm are then faced with marginalization. Same-sex desiring relationships were viewed negatively by many participants in the study, almost like an abomination. The rights of individuals with same-sex desires are influenced and policed by heterosexist narratives and the idealized concept of heterosexual marriage and societal norms. Right. Moving to another theme. Certain participants view the same-sex sexuality as un-African and holds the belief that same-sex relations are an import from the West. And when you look at the comments from Bongani and Bongumusa, you will notice that Bongani says, I think black people are just copying what white people is copying what white people because this is new to the black people, which means homosexuality and same-sex desiring was never there in Africa before. It only came with the white people. Right. This discussion positions same-sex desiring identities as diversion from African cultural norms and deeply influenced by the historical legacies of colonialism and Western values. This implies that there never was same-sex sexuality in African continent. Msebi, on the other hand, contend that presence of same-sex relations in Southern Africa, as illustrated through Bushman's paintings in the caves, serve as an affirmation that such has existed for an extended period. Right. Okay. And also, when you look at this finding and when you look at the comments from the participants, most of them, they are referring to the Sodom and Gomorrah, which was destroyed by God because of their immorality. And they are also referring that God only created man and woman, which means it's only a heterosexual relationship that is considered to be a norm. So in this finding, revealed that the majority of learners subscribing to a particular religion holds non-acceptance, judgment, and discrimination for non-normative sexuality. This perspective reinforces the idea that relationships should conform to relationship that comprises gender binary, and that anything outside of this norm is considered demonic or unnatural. Many participants express that their religious beliefs categorically condemns non-normative sexualities, citing the Bible as the basis for justifying their attitudes and their beliefs, as you can see from the slides. Religion often serves as a most influential factor in predicting negative attitudes towards learners with same-sex desiring among heterosexual peers. Some learners' perceptions of sexuality are deeply rooted in their religious beliefs. Right. Okay. Then looking at the last finding, which speaks on the explicit discrimination, you will see also from the slide that most of the learners were explicitly discriminated or are explicitly discriminated within the school environment. It was found that same-sex desiring identities encounters explicit discrimination within school. Heterosexual learners use different derogatory terms or names to discriminate against heterosexual learners. The findings reveal that learners use homophobic language as a form of name-calling and labeling as a means to discriminate against same-sex desiring learners. They call them names such as Isitabane, Inkonkoni, Sisi Boy, Boys to Men, or Chomi, to demean or to devalue gender identities. The derogatory terms, insults, and jokes contribute to the construction of a negative discourse around same-sex desiring identities. Apart from being called names, same-sex desiring learners are also teased and socially excluded at school by heterosexual learners. Making jokes about same-sex desiring identities is an expression of homophobia and a form of discrimination. This highlights a critical issue of prejudice and unacceptance towards non-conforming gender identities. Moving forward, educating influential community members would have a greater influence and impact on the community by disrupting, challenging, and transforming the existing negative attitudes towards same-sex desiring identities. There is a pressing need for parents to be educated about same-sex sexualities, enabling them to unlearn prevalent biases and to foster a more inclusive understanding. Curriculum reform and monitoring in support of same-sex desiring learners is needed at school. It is imperative to actively challenge existing perceptions by providing opportunities for constructing same-sex desiring identities in a gender-inclusive manner. Initiating this change early on can contribute to diminishing traditional stereotypes and prevent homophobic prejudice in schools. Interventions spanning all facets of society have the potential to provide learners and the community with the chance to embrace diverse sexualities and to reduce the everyday occurrences of discrimination and victimizations against gender non-conforming individuals and learners with the same-sex desires. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandu. In the interest of time, we will now move on to the panel discussion, but we will also include the presenters from session 2 and session 3 in the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. Janak. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon once again. We've now come to the panel discussion session, and in this panel, I would like to welcome the speakers from the previous session as well, and I think that was Dr. Musa, Dr. Giunarine, Hao, Muzi, non-Dumiso. The panel discussion will also include, okay, so I think these are the panelists for now. Please do bring your chairs to the front as you join. Professor Yue, can you also please join the panel discussion? Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. If I could please have your attention. So the discussion for this session will revolve around the topic, and that is reimagining gender and sexuality in Global South early childhood education. And to begin this panel discussion, I think I will take questions from the audience. Does anyone have a question to ask our panelists present here? Okay, sorry, Shanae or Sabrina, I think we have a question from Dr. Ngidi.
Thank you. Oh, what a day. Yeah, my soul is fed. I thought I knew things, I realize I know nothing. So thank you so much for that. Muzi, you are amazing, you are beautiful. Yeah. So from what I'm gathering here, there seem to be a thread that I'm seeing that, and this is something I'm trying to also encourage my students, my postgrad students, and just taking from what your presentation, Muzi, was all about, the idea of separating when we write, when we speak, when we theorize, separating gender identity from gender expression and then sexual orientations. And I say orientations in plural because I noticed that a person can embody more than one sexual orientation. And that gender identity does not always translate to gender expression or vice versa. And I think we need to start thinking around how we conceptualize and use these terms. But my question is, I guess to you, Muzi, more than everybody else, but I guess to everyone as well who's willing to answer is, I also hear a lot of defiance that comes with the work that we do, but also that particularly the children who are marginalized have to go through a form of defiance in order to be seen, in order to be visible, because they are policed through space, through clothing, through embodiments, but also emotionally. And it takes a lot of fighting, be defiant, but that defiance comes at a cost. It could be emotional and physical. So my question is then, how might we then start mobilizing learners as activists for social transformation within the context of gender and sexualities? Thank you.
Thank you for the compliments and the question. I think for me, sorry, hey. I think for me, do you know what? It's honest to take it back to the children. I think right now we're focusing on the system, which is good to focus on because it does need amendments, and we are focusing on the teachers and the parents. But I think the most important voice that we're missing, that all studies are missing, and I think when I was finding the gap to see through my academic journey, the voice that's missing is the voice of the children. And I think that's why gender studies and gender conversations remain things like theories or ideologies, is because we're not having many of these conferences or conversations, that promote gender non-conforming or gender non-binary individuals to speak their truth. So I think the reason why it feels like, even though I've walked such a long journey, like I haven't done anything, because it's all good and well that I'm able to change my immediate context, but if the greater context isn't changed, or nothing happens to it, then there's not really that much that I'm achieving. So I think what is important is for us to go back to our children, because another thing in this conversation is the age demographic. We are speaking about things that are assumed by the elder generation. It's now knowing that we've got students who graduate at the ages of 22 to 25 who become teachers in ECE or in high schools. So we're speaking to a new generation of practitioners. We're speaking to a new generation of leaders and of teachers, and that's why it's important for us to go to the children, to discover the differences, to discover the diversity and the versatility, and understand that all of that exists within one institution, exists within that one schooling system. But I think for me, what we need to head towards is knowing, I think you'll also have experienced it, and the fellow panelists, is that there is quite a very big jump between high school and varsity. Varsity comes with freedom that allows you to be expressive of yourself, whereas school doesn't. But that also is a contributing factor to why the success rates in higher education institutions aren't where they should be. Because when children get into those institutions and feel overwhelmed or feel shell-shocked, it then makes them feel insecure and makes them draw back. So I think for us, we mustn't do what the curriculum did to us when we were growing up and just introduce a new system and introduce a new policy without taking into consideration those who need to live in that policy and live through that system. I think it is important to make sure that children understand that we are encouraging them to be explorative, still have those confines, because it's important for one to be disciplined, but allow school to be a time where people get to explore and people get to be, and not be so much about policy and about system, particularly for children aged between 7 and 18. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muzi, for your response, and Dr. Ngidi for your question. Are there any other questions? Okay, I see a hand up here.
My question would be maybe directed towards Dr. Msiza. So we know that there is underrepresentations of males in the ECD or early childhood education sector, and being early childhood education educator, what were some of the challenges you faced in terms of colleagues and management, and how can we readdress this in the schools that we teach in to make it a more comfortable environment so that more male teachers feel like they've been given equal opportunity as the female teachers and equal respect?
Okay, thank you for that question. I have to firstly set a disclaimer that I did my undergrad and then I jumped to postgraduate. The only teaching experience I have in basic education is teaching practice. But through the research that I've conducted, mainly what these men are experiencing, and they are placed in rural schools where you would expect conservative views. So most of them, what they've experienced is questioning where they would be asked, are you going to cope? And the question that I raise in the morning where they'll be asked, what are you going to do if a child defecate or urinate? How are you going to handle that situation? But I think in our, the problem lies with the recruitment. And there's a policy in South Africa, I forgot its name, but I've cited it in my work, that deals with teacher recruitment. So it's not specific on gender. So I think we need to be more deliberate in recruiting men. And also, as I said, we don't have media presence where men, for instance, taking an advertising campaign where we show men teaching in early childhood education, because people are not getting into ECE as teachers on the basis of fear. So, but if we are, because there are examples out there, I know teachers who participated in my research and others, they are now friends, who are doing amazing work. And I believe that such work, if it could get into the public, people would begin to open up to the concept of having male teachers in the ECD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Msiza. Any other questions from the audience? We've had excellent presentations thus far from the speakers, so I see a hand up. Thank you.
Yes, my question is for Dr. Howe. It's on one of the participants who said that they would have two personas, one for the school and one for the home environment. Then what do they say when they go out into society? How do they negotiate their personalities or identities? And like, what sort of support can the teachers do to assist the participants? What sort of strategies do you think they suggested?
Thank you for your question. Actually, that's part of my PhD research. What I did is because I use biographic interview, so I research about how the young age to the old age. So I divide three parts. The first part is how the negotiation in the educational space, then how the negotiation in the working space, that's a middle age. And then I'm looking for how the old queer male negotiate their identity in the family space. So your question is asking how they negotiation their identity in working and in the family space. So in the working space, they may usually hide their identity, but they will use Grindr, use Bluedy, this kind of dating app, explore who have a same identity. So that's a way how they build in a relationship. Also, they think they will not show their queer identity to the college because they think the college is not friend. So try to protect themselves. They will not use any strategy and to show their identity, but they will use Grindr to build the relationship online, building the online community, kind of that. The most important, most interesting part in the old queer generation, because they don't know how to use queer dating app, so they have to go to offline, the community space. So what the strategy is that because they don't have any the sexual capital, but they want to build a relationship with young people, so they usually use a cushion in the park, in the sauna rooms. That's a maybe traditional strategy for them. So if you want to know more, maybe just waiting, I write down this chapter in the future. But I just want to share those two stories. Yes, that's a part of my PhD. I can talk about more later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hao. Are there any other questions? Okay, there's a hand up at the back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My question is for Nondumiso Mapumulo. Hi. I see that your work is based in a co-ed school where you have boys and girls, and you're basically exploring, their perceptions on same-sex desiring. Even though my question is slightly abstract, but I would love for you to work with me. Do you think that you would have had the same findings if your research was based in a single-sex boys' school? Yes or no, and why not?
Hi, Shandu. I think I was still going to have the same results, because when I was interviewing learners, you will mostly, the boys were the ones who were so much against the same-sex desiring identities. So they are holding this culture that they have been raised by their forefathers who are against homosexuality, and they also refer to Ushaka Zulu. If Shaka Zulu was here, there will be no one who will be gay in KwaZulu-Natal. So you see, Uguti, these guys are having a perception that homosexuality in Africa, homosexuality in the Zulu culture have no place. So I think I will have the same results.
Thank you very much, Nondumiso. I will now hand over to Dr. Musa, who would like to ask a question. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to ask a question to one of our panel members, Dr. Msiza. So I heard that you mentioned about media houses and recruitment, being actively involved in recruiting male teachers in their ECE and in the foundation phase. So I graduated in 2010, and there wasn't a single male student who graduated with me. And then I had a very close friend, Dr. Govender, who was in ECD at the time, ECD foundation phase, and there wasn't a single male student at the time. So recently I was just reviewing the statistics, and I was like, I was happy to see that in the recent years, there's 60 male students registering for foundation phase. 1 year, there's about 40. And for me, this seems phenomenal. And I wanted to ask if you feel that your presence as a male lecturer, a male senior lecturer in ECD, is having an influence in terms of recruiting men or male students.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. I don't think it's necessarily me being present in ECE, because in my group, we were plus minus 40 men who graduated. I graduated 2014, meaning I completed 2013. So, and ever since that, you are right, we've seen an increase in terms of the number of students who are taking ECE. There's another element, and I actually found this in my master's research, where men are taking ECD because of funding. Because at that time, was it Funza Lushaka? Yes, Funza Lushaka was providing bursaries for students who are wanting to do early childhood education. And I remember there was a drive through Funza Lushaka to have foundation phase teachers who specializes in languages. So I know that in the University of Mpumalanga, there's also a high number of male foundation phase teachers, because they were trying to uplift isiNdebele and isiSwati. And also in KwaZulu-Natal, I know that they've been targeting isiZulu. So I think the main reason has been funding more than anything. Well, my presence, I think, the contribution I make is whenever I teach, I do, because it's a topic that I'm passionate about. So whenever I teach, I do touch on that topic. Especially the life skills module and even the other module that I teach, which is understanding childhood development. So if I'm speaking about, say, dance and movement, I know that men might not be comfortable to do certain dance movements for kids. And that's not only an issue for men, but there's a scholar at VETS who actually conducted research that ECE teachers, they don't want to perform, they don't want to get into role playing and in fact enact the play-based pedagogy that we use in the foundation phase. So, but for me, I know that men are a bit more uncomfortable, and I would, in specific topics, I would touch on that deliberately so that they know that it's okay to do this. And in my view, I always say, I view, and I think my thinking is mainly informed by bell hooks, that teaching is a performative act. So when you get to the classroom, sometimes I forget who I am and I just talk and talk and talk. It should be the same with them. That when you get to the classroom, forget about the fact that you are a man, forget about your race, just teach and deliver the content. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Msiza. I think we still have time for about 2 more questions. Your hand is noted as well. Thank you.
Okay, so firstly, brilliantly on all of your studies, and your topics are very interesting. So I have a question. So it was brought up within our conference about the tripod, where there's a learner and parent and teacher. So my question is, what are your perspectives on the positioning of children in early childhood education, specifically on sexuality education and gender? So that is my question.
Thank you. I think Muzi has already said to bring the children into the conversations and also to actively engage with children as active participants. There's actually a growing body of scholarship and also a growing body of work done in the field of child activism or youth activism, where children are recognized and noted as very important sources of change. They actively participate in challenging the policies, challenging the work people do. So I think that's an important aspect, especially I mean, we realize, like, even today we talk a lot about the school system, we talk about the issues of the policies, and we talk about challenges working with parents, we talk about challenges faced by teachers. The key thing here for me is the teachers are not the problem. Although they are teaching children sometimes in gendered ways, they are not the problem, and parents neither, even if they are raising their children in gendered ways or sexualized ways, because they were raised up in similar ways. The structure have been there for decades, been difficult to challenge, so we can't simply blame parents saying, oh, you have to change, or simply tell teachers you need to change, because we now notice it's a more gender equal, gender diverse society. There's so many ways of performing gender and sexuality, and simply tell them you have to change. But it's also about supporting them to go through this process and to become realizing the issues out there, the wider structural issues. And in that process, I think children makes a big role here as well, who can be teachers and educators for the adults. One example that immediately came to my mind was in China, whereby we were working with the teachers on issues around gender, and some of the female teachers expressed their concern in terms of, for example, they said they were raised up being told they have to keep clean, and they were raised up being told insects are terrible, disgusting. So they are used to not getting close to insects and not getting themselves dirty. But now they find it really difficult to work with children and try to encourage, for example, girls, telling them it's okay for you to be dirty, it's okay for you to interact with insects and things, when they themselves do not feel comfortable doing that. So we did this session, and we encouraged the children to interact with insects and become dirty. And in that process, the teachers, they see the children doing that, so brave, touching the insects, finding out how they feel, how they look like. And then some of the female teachers came after those activities. They said, I was very encouraged. I was inspired by our children that they are so brave to do those things. And then they start to say, okay, maybe I should give it a try to step out of my comfort zone. So that example is also about showing how the children themselves can inspire adults, parents or teachers, but not necessarily saying in this kind of process of challenging gender norms, heteronormativity, we need to regard the adults as a problem, but it can be an alliance of both adults and children that work together, inspiring each other together, and also to challenge this binary construction of adults and child. I think that's also an underlying aspect in this process, that the power relationships to be recognized and to be disrupted in this process. So that I hope that answers your questions, but others may have things to add. I don't know.
Sorry, just to add, I absolutely agree. I think another thing that will help is working towards a non-labeled society. I think in all of our movements and all these conferences that we're doing, we all need to collectively work towards delabelizing society. Because if we're wanting to dismantle the current binary that exists, we can't dismantle it by introducing new labels that we're asking children to use. I think it's like a simple example that I encouraged one of my old schools to do, which is a private school, so they were more open to it. And that's to have more, so again, I think it's us being vocal about you don't have to do 100% of change now, and baby steps are the way to go. So simple things like changing head boy and head girl to it being head prefect, simple things like having maybe casual Fridays where it's still a uniform, but the uniform is a golf shirt with the school logo on it, and then children are encouraged to wear whatever they're comfortable wearing at the bottom. And it's just allowing those kids to do baby steps of expressing themselves differently, and then allowing the system to quite naturally go with the changes and the level of the child. Because we also can't induce these children into a completely new system that they are also foreign, that's foreign or alienated from, for them. You know, I think there was a profound point that was raised by one of the speakers today, and that said you need, I think it was you, Prof. Barnum, you spoke of how it's important to speak to the age, to not speak to the concept of child, to speak to the age, and to understand that we have these different phases in institutions, and we need to implore changes that are targeted to that particular category, and know that with small introductions of change, greater amendments can happen. If we can make children feel more comfortable just in what their apparel is going to school, I promise you there's a lot more that can happen when it comes to them working academically or in extracurriculars. So I think it's small steps going forward, but steps that are system-oriented, steps that allow us to amend the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Muzi and Professor Yue. I think we're almost coming to the end of this panel discussion. I did notice there was someone from the audience prior to this that had a question. It will be a quick one.
I don't know whether it's a comment or a question, but it's based on what Nondomisa Mapumulo said. In her research, there was one student who talked about saying there were no, in the old days, there were no people attracted to the same sex. I don't even know if I believe that, because there was no independent in the old days. So I feel like people were afraid to come out because they were afraid of being disowned and not being accepted by the society. So I don't know what you guys feel about that, but I feel like it's not per se true to say there were no people who were attracted to the same sex in the old days. I just feel like they were afraid to come out.
When you look at the research, there is a research by Prof. Msibi where he has made an example of the Bushman caves where there were paintings of the same-sex desiring identities to say that it means it existed long time ago when there was even no paper to write it on, but it was painted on the caves. So most probably they were there, but they were afraid to come out. When you hear from the boys at the school, they always talk about, because you know the Zulu culturally inclined boys, they will always refer to the older kings that were there previously. They refer to Ushaka Zulu, who would kill people because of their homosexuality. So it means even though they were there, they would not come out because they know that Shaka Zulu will kill them. So I think they were there, but it was a matter of them being afraid to come out. As even in this day and age, there are those who are still afraid to come out because they are afraid of being judged.
Can I also add about 2 readings that if you're interested, you might go and read. The first one, it's a novel. It's both, it's balanced. It's fiction, but the author draws from the real research. It's by Fred Kumalo, titled The Longest March. So he writes about a book, he speaks about how men in hostels used to prostitute themselves to other men. And that practice is called Omakochana. So go and read that book. Another one is by Ifi Amadume. I forgot the title, but I think it's The Female Daughters and Male Husbands. Yes. So and yes, by Ifi Amadume, IFI then Amadume. So she writes about how gender was fluid back in the days where daughters they would inherit stuff from their fathers, they would head families and so on. So it's such an interesting book that even Prof. Msibi in the article that Nondumbis has provided you with, I think it's published in Africa Today, he draws from that book. So I think it's going to be helpful for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Msiza and Nondumiso. So unfortunately, we are almost out of time. Due to time constraints, we cannot get to all the questions for the panel discussion. However, I do request that you do meet with the panelists later on during tea, and you could ask them your questions there. Before we end off, I would like to request Professor Yue to share with us some reflections on today's session and overall the conference.
Thank you. I think I will be brief, but I'm very impressed by today. So thanks, first of all, to Professor Bana for inviting me, and also for all the speakers for a very inspiring day. To be honest, sitting here for the whole day, I'm a little bit jealous. The reason why I'm jealous is because there is already an established ally of researchers from different generations in this country and at your university that are keen to work on the issues of gender and sexuality in early childhood education. I myself noticed this gap in the global south and in China as well. So I'm also working towards hoping to establish such an ally, but you have it here already with all of you being so doing so much work on those on the issues at different levels from different people's perspectives. So I really am impressed by this, and it's learning for me how I need to talk to Professor Bana after today, like how to build up such a team for the Chinese community, because we obviously also see the need for that for my country, and I think Hao will agree with me in that regard. So that will be my main reflection from today. That thank you so much for a very impressive and impressive day, and also thank you so much for the work you have been doing for better childhoods and also for the better society. It takes time. It won't stop today, and it's also a long journey, because my experience, particularly doing comparative and international work, is I realize not just us, even those countries like UK, Australia, United States, Germany, Sweden, they've been working on those things for ages as well. But still, if you go to a kindergarten in in UK and in Australia, you still see teachers and things like this happening as well. So it will take time, but I think there's hope. And also, I hope colleagues here, we will all persist in doing this work in the long term and for a better future for ourselves and for our future generations. So let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yue. And thank you for sharing your research with us as well. It's always good to learn from each other. Thank you to all the panelists as well, panel members, and for sharing your research with us. I'm sure the students here have learned a lot, including myself. Before we end the session, of course, we have now come to the end of the panel discussion, but before we end the entire conference for the day, I would like to now hand you over to Professor Bana, who will offer the closing remarks. Before I do this, students, please note that once Professor Bana has concluded, there will be tea that will be served after the conference. Thank you so much.
I'm absolutely delighted to be ending today's note on Professor Chu's comment about being jealous of us out here in Durban, South Africa. And I want to reverberate Dr. Ngidi's words, "My soul has been fed." If only we can understand how powerful today has been and how grateful we should be for the democracy that we have today to be able to do such work. So in response to you, Professor, we are able to do such work because of this particular moment in South Africa's history. If we compare what we are able to do with what is being experienced in your context, we can see vast differences. But I want to conclude by saying that this conference was not going to be possible without all of you present. I also want to say that we can never predict in advance what the outcome of such a meeting will be. But today, I am so convinced of my earlier statements about the urgency, Musi, listening to you. My heart was blown away, and listening to all of you. The urgency of addressing gender and sexuality has been highlighted in every presentation today. In every presentation, we have seen the threads of gender and heteronormativity operating in ways to continually create these binaries and continually to harm individuals. And it is time for us to stop this. I am also so struck by the fact that it might be the only place in the global south where we have developed such a powerful team. And I'm hoping that today will be inspiration for all of you to pursue your studies. And I'm so glad to and grateful to you, Dr. Musa, for bringing in the honor students, to you, Dr. Mziza, for showcasing this work to undergraduate students, for you, Dr. Ngidi, for being part of our team. and all of you here, because we need you sitting right here as champions for this work. And you have seen what is available for you to do in relation to this work. And so I want to end by saying I sincerely thank you for your attendance today. I sincerely thank our keynote for making the journey all the way from Nottingham to South Africa. And I want to say that I feel that our goal today to build the next generation of young South